Well, this is a new year, but I'm afraid it's the same two old tired faces facing our viewers
Hey,
today, Pat.
speak for
Aren't we
yourself,
ashamed of
Holmes.
ourselves?
Tell me
You're
about my.
tired because you were out carousing on
I'm yeah.
Saturday night. I'm a sensible man. I went to my bed. I acted my age, but you
Uh,
were out on the streets. You were telling me.
what do you call it? In fact, you know something? We were in Spain for Christmas. My lover badly needs a rest. Uh, in fact, we have people staying with us, so I'll probably be having a drink tonight. But see tomorrow, back on the straight and narrow because Jesus, I think I need to start doing something. And as well as that, I don't know about you, but I've hardly been outside the door walking or exercising or anything. So I
Well,
need to start doing something.
yeah, I really had to push myself today. I went out for a walk because although it's very bright, it's bitterly cold.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know that you get into that sort of lazy kind of mood over
Yeah.
Christmas, I think, where you say, "Ah, no, I'll not bother. I'll do it tomorrow," or
Yeah,
"I'll
and
leave it."
I find myself making cups of coffee every half
Ah,
hour, and
yeah,
saying,
I'll take have another biscuit and maybe another chocolate at
exactly.
it, and maybe
Yeah.
have a pint. This goes on and on.
Uh,
Okay,
uh,
let's look at the affairs of the nation. Well, not the nation, actually, the state. Uh, uh, the first item you've drawn my attention to, Pat, is Dr. Aidan Boyle, who
yeah.
has pointed out that the worst on record for A&E wait times is hitting us, and that there's a rocketing demand for hospital beds because of flu, COVID,
Uh,
and strep A. What is strep? What is it?
Streptococcus, I
What
can't
what is
pronounce it,
that?
but
Is that a
that's
throat thing?
a really bad throat infection. But
I thought of it.
then it poisons your system.
Well, he says 300 to 500 people are dying.
Yeah,
Is
that's
it a
why I
week
sent
or
it
a
on to you.
month, Pat? Is it every
No,
week?
well,
Surely it's every month.
I think he's talking. I think it's all of Britain, but it's over this period.
Oh yeah.
Because people are not getting the attention they need. Dude, there's a whole political thing, and I don't know enough about it, but from what I have read, there seems to be a suggestion that there's now a serious knock-on effect from underinvestment in the NHS. Not enough doctors, not enough nurses, GPs overloaded, waiting lists going up. People who should be treated quickly and efficiently are not. They're waiting, and then by the time they get treated, it's too late. Jude, he reckons there could be 300 to 500 extra deaths in Britain over this sort of Christmas, New Year period from people who are not getting the treatment. Jude, that is an absolute disgrace
Oh,
in one of the
terrible.
richest countries in the world.
Oh, it's really terrible. So we're talking about the UK here.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, it is appalling. But Aidan Boyle has said, that they need to get a grip of this.
Yeah, yeah,
My question is this: can anything be done? I mean, it's all very well to say get a grip. I mean, you're faced with this number of sick people. You have a certain number of beds, certain number of medics, nurses, doctors, and so on.
yeah.
What are you going to do about it? You can't really do anything,
No,
can you?
no, there's no short-term fix. And no, but you sit down and sort of say to yourself, there's a lot of ideological thing at play. What was it? The NHS was founded to treat people from the cradle to the grave,
Hmm.
and it's now getting hived off, and a lot. There's a lot of big money being um, bits of it broken off and given to particularly American investment firms who are making big profits. That whole PPE thing exposed the charade, whatever way you want to pronounce that word, of the way investment works. The Tories were looking after their friends, massive contracts awarded, and so on. That it sort of exposed with them. There's a lot going on in the health service, and I think it's the few are getting looked after, not the many.
Yeah, the trouble is, you see, there's waiting times are so awful, and this is the
Yeah,
point that Aidan Boyle is making. That
it pushed them
waiting
towards
times are
private.
so awful that people say, if I haven't got some serious condition, if I can scrape together a few bob, I'm going to go private.
Yeah, that's
If
exactly the point.
if your
That's
life's
what.
at stake, you're going to
Yeah,
do everything. You'll sell a bloody house if necessary
yeah,
to get it. And yet, some people are not in that position. They don't even have. But
yeah,
at this, two things are happening. One is there's some people dying, as you've pointed out, in their hundreds, and then also the sort of strength of the private sector is being heightened every day
yeah,
because
yeah.
people are almost giving up on the NHS, which
I don't
they
remember who
love and
it
revere and
was.
respect, but they don't want to die for it.
There was an economist several years back, and as usual, because I read that much, I don't know, I never remember who says these things. But he said one of the old thing, the ideological ones, Tories, was underinvest in a service like water or something. Get people to complain about it, and then say we'll fix it by making it private and all the rest, like the real service, not. And then he says there's profit taking, and then you find that the whole infrastructure is absolutely disaster. Well, that's what's happening to the NHS.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know. I'm very struck by the fact that nobody, even the Tories, daren't say that the NHS isn't a really good system and it should be developed and strengthened and so on. The public affection of the British for and people in the north of Ireland as well for the NHS is such that they've got to tread carefully. Now, admittedly, they're being very successful in running it down, but at the same time, I think the strength of affection people have for it, as well as respect, I think that'll win out in the long run.
Yeah, though it breaks my heart to have to say this, but the guy who actually was the forerunner of this public-private partnership was Tony Blair. He was the guy. Now, had been mooted for some time, but the first person, as far as I'm aware, that actually started to bring in privatisation was a Labour Prime Minister.
But I'll tell you, Patrick, that's what they call facing facts. I remember, was it a school that Martin McGuinness opened in Derry, and it was public-private enterprise.
Partnership.
And he didn't want it. He said, well, we have a choice, like no school or the school this way. So that's the way it goes, you're forced to do it. And then it's the same thing with we traveled on the M50 in Dublin, and I mean, it's an amazing bloody road, and it is working well, I think. But the amount of money that the guys who own it,
it's the biggest rip-off in Irish state history.
They must be making so much money.
It's been paid for about 3 times. And apparently when they go to sell it back to the state, now I'm open to correction on this, but they're going to get their money back again.
Yeah.
So in other words, you talk about a cash cow.
Yeah. If you're up against the wall, you have to make these decisions and, hope things will work out better afterwards. But
no, but just, Jude, the reason I brought that up, Jude, we're looking around now and I think COVID's coming down the track again. Yeah. There's a flu out there and, Jude, every day now, and, you turn on the TV and you read somebody else famous has died and somebody else famous has died. And you're going, Jesus, there's so, and you're wondering, is this COVID related or is it just normal or maybe it's a time of year or something? And then when you read a doctor saying 300 to 500 people will die over this Christmas New Year period, who for no reason other than the fact that they weren't treated properly in a hospital setting.
Yeah, well, I suppose we wouldn't do the exaggerated. People are going to die all the time. But at the same time, there does seem to be a notable increase in numbers, and you do see you're caught by the headline figures for these. There's another famous actor died the other day. Well, Pope Benedict died, and that woman, what's her name, Vivian?
Vivian Westwood.
Vivian Westwood, and also what's his name? The Aussie or the New Zealander actor has died. I can't think of his name. Come back to me. It was been. It's very sad. Reminds us of our own mortality. Anyway, I just think that people should come clean on this with regard to getting a grip. What does getting a grip mean? Can we do anything in the present situation? If not, how long will it take us to get things changed so that we do have a grip? So let's leave the general statements of condemnation and go after addressing some sort of solutions that might work. Okay, the second item you have, Pat, is a very cheerful one, and that is that there were 1 million Irish passports issued last year.
Observe former diplomat Ray Bassett. Ray was in charge of the passport office for several years, and he posted yesterday that it was a record, and he says 1 million passports were issued last year. And now, Jude, the thought occurred to me, by God, there's a hell of a lot of work involved to the staff for 1 million passports. I know, but I was thinking to myself, what are the implications? That's a hell of a lot of people now with Irish passports. And, apparently, I think someone said to me yesterday that the Irish passport is the 3rd most powerful passport in the world. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not. But anyway, one thing I do notice, it causes you very few problems. Jude, let me tell you a quick story. Many years ago, we were going to Australia. and there was a guy on the passport desk, and he stopped everybody, and we sort of came up, and he says, "Oh, Irish," and we said, and he started to us, she's gone ahead, and I thought, I thought to myself, there was he didn't. I think he might have looked at the wife's passport and all the rest. All he wanted to do was chat. And look, there was, and I thought, he certainly didn't seem to like the British very much, because he stopped quite a few people with British passports. Yep. So I thought to myself, carrying a passport from a country that's never invaded anybody else, not bad.
Aye, that's true. Well, I think I must say my heart surges when I hear those figures. And I get a wry smile on my face when I hear the likes of Ian Paisley Jr. telling his constituents it might be an idea to get an Irish passport. Yeah. But I don't know. I think we like to be loved too much.
Yeah.
We like to be loved too much. In practical terms, people get this so they can travel more and you don't have to queue up for so long. And also, as you say, the British passport in parts of the world, an awful lot of parts of the world, is not a particularly popular one. No. So if you can have an Irish one, that is much more popular. So I don't know that it makes a big difference. And I just think we need to be aware of the fact that it isn't that everybody thinks Ireland is a wonderful place, or the south of Ireland is a wonderful place, or the north of Ireland is a wonderful place. It's just that it's a damned handy thing to have. For some people, there's sentimental value, yes, Americans and so on. But I think most people would get it because it means they now have access to countries and queues and so on that they otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah. No, Jude, another funny thing, we were coming back from Spain the other day, I think it was the Tuesday after Christmas. And we were we went down to the departure gate, and there was a young Spanish girl there, and she says, the flight was to Belfast. And she looked at us, she says, Irish? We said, yeah. And there was a young fella and his girlfriend, she's British. She says, join that queue. A big long queue. I thought it occurred to me that, there was definitely one advantage of being Irish in there anyway.
Yeah. I remember at the time, but this is a sort of a diversion thing, but my brother was ordained in Rome, and the whole family went out. Yeah. The father, made sure we all got out to it. Yeah. And as we approached the customs in Italy, the guy was flummoxed because for whatever reason now, several of my sisters had got British passports and the rest of us had Irish passports. And the guy was saying, you British, you sister, brother, you British, you Irish. Couldn't get his head around it. So it was an early lesson to him in the absurdities of
Irish history.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's go get local then. The story you have about Derry and the oil prices in Derry.
Yeah. I'll not mention the name of the guy that sent it on to me because I don't have his permission. But what he said was, he says, here's a topic that you and Judy might discuss. He says, oil prices basically went through the roof. And he says, then they came down. And he says, but he says, you didn't really notice them at the petrol pumps or when you were getting domestic heating oil. And he's saying, I am not standing over this, but he says, Pat, it occurs to me, he said, that there's serious amount of price gouging going on because people are, he says, particularly the suppliers are taking advantage of the current situation. Now, Jude, the prices have come down a wee bit, but for a while there, Jude, when the prices dropped, like at one stage, the price of a barrel of oil was way over 100, and then it went way down, but it never came down at the pumps. So I was wondering, his point was, look, wait a minute, are there people out there, as usual, taking advantage of other people's hardship?
But Pat, I think he's put his finger on it exactly. They're taking advantage of other people's hardship, but that's the name of the game. That's how capitalism works. You have supply and you have demand. And the demand is high because people don't want to be cold. And these guys have got their sort of their hand on the lock that's going to release stuff. So they can, within reason, charge as much as they like. That's the way it is. It's appalling. I just think it's desperate. But that's how it goes. That's how it goes. That's a system we have bought into.
Aye, we got our full air, our fuel company. Like we live close to the border, so anyway, our company's in Northern Ireland, We got 500 liters there, and I wouldn't even begin to try to price them.
Oh,
That's double what it was
yes, yes,
this time
that's
last
us
year.
too. Us
Easily
too.
double this time what it was last time. And we got a couple of bags of coal over Christmas. And Jude, that's not funny either. I would, and I'm deadly, deadly serious, Jude. We are far from rich, but we can afford to eat and heat just about, in a reasonable way. And that's after having reared the kids and educating
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
I would hate to be somebody on a fixed income,
Oh, dude,
dependent only on a pension.
definitely. This is the first winter I remember when I thought and said, now, should I switch on the heat for an hour or will I not?
Hi. Well, we're doing
Maybe
the
I'll put
same.
on
I think
another
everybody's doing the
jersey
same.
instead.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
never, that wouldn't have crossed my mind before. And now
Jude,
we're starting.
you've just said someone that I would say 98%. We're doing the same. Everybody's doing the same. Nobody's turning around saying, "Oh, here we'll put on the heating all day, every day." Not at all. You're looking. Can we turn it off now? The sun's out and it's not too cold. We'll put it off for a couple of hours now because see tonight at about 6 o'clock it's going to be very cold again.
I wonder how they are. Well, maybe there is different matter in North America. When I was in Canada, which is a vile winter, I mean, I was amazed at how well heated every building was. Everybody's home, everybody's school, everybody's offices. They seem to no bother. And I'm trying to think. They certainly got some of their oil from a big project called Athabasca Sands, but I gather America is self-sufficient now, owing to the amount of fracking.
Americans had a lot. What's it? Texas and a lot of the big oil fields out there, and then there's I think they developed a whole hell of a lot of them are there quite recently, following scares about a lack of self-sufficiency.
So are they not? Is it not a problem for them at all now? That isn't.
As far as I know, no, Jude, it's not. I don't. In fact, there was some talk that were. Now, I'm open to correction on this. That they were talking about possibly exporting oil to Europe to supplement our supply during the war with Putin's war.
Well, maybe the special relationship with Britain would encourage them to give us a cut price for tankfuls of oil over the winter. But again, I come back to that. My hackles rise at the thought that these guys have got the oil at a certain price, and though logic would say they should now lower their prices, that they don't. My hackles rise at that.
You're basically saying
that's how it goes. That's
but in other words, you're just saying, hey, if you're in the capitalist game, that's how it works.
Yes, that's right. And I in a way, it's hard to fault people. That I'm in a business. I want to make money, and I make money by selling a product. Now, if I am in position to sell a product for £10 rather than for £6, well, I'll sell it for £10.
That's the reality of capitalism.
Yeah. Okay, bring back USSR. That's what I say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Back in the USSR.
I watched that. By the way, I watched that movie again last night. Not last night, 2 nights ago. Yesterday. You ever see that one?
Is that the one about John Lennon?
I will know. The guy has he has an car accident.
Yeah,
and he wakes up and nobody remembers the Beatles, only him.
That's a lovely film.
It's a beauty.
That bit about John Lennon is really sad every time.
But you realise how good the songs were when the guy plays them on the piano.
Absolutely.
Solo, or when he belts them out in the guitar. Yeah, it was lovely. Anyway, that's back in the USSR was one of the ones he played. And everybody said, why is he saying USSR? Should it not be Russia? Okay. So 2/3 of British people, RTE's John Kilrain has said that 2/3 or 65% of British people think Brexit has gone badly. Should we put budding genius on the chest of every one of them that comes to that conclusion, or
I read that this morning.
Or should we have ex-idiot?
Well, take it out any way you want. But right, every economist is saying it's a disaster. The figures are saying it's a disaster. I watched it in Spain, and you can see it's a disaster. Hoteliers are saying it's a disaster. Fruit pickers are saying it's a disaster. Fishermen are saying it's a disaster. Yet we have Jacob Rees-Mogg and various Tory party, trying to say it's COVID and trying to say it's various other things. No other major economy has got the problems Britain has. They needed 60 billion for 6 weeks, thanks to Liz Truss and her Truss economics or Trussonomics or whatever the hell you call it. Jude, go and tell me, how many times do you have to get slapped in the face before you cop on somebody slapping you in the face?
Well, I think it'd be quite a number of times if the Labour Party maintains the present stance.
What do
The
you mean by
Labour
that?
Party is frightened. I'm going to use a rude word there, but they're very frightened that
Yeah.
if they mention the idea, which is the logical thing, of course, of joining the single market or even doing a second referendum to see, as you've said, if 65% of people think Brexit was a bad idea, if they mention it, they're fearful that the wrath of the leavers will fall upon them and that their electoral advantage, the opinion polls, will be wiped out. They're
Yeah.
fearful, totally fearful. It actually it introduces a very interesting point for me, because we're always being told here that people fall into the old cliched positions of orange and green. And
Yeah.
what they should be concentrating on is bread and butter issues.
Yeah.
Now, what is more of a bread and butter issue than the fact that the economy is going tanking in Britain?
Yeah.
And yet they're afraid to do something that obviously would fix that, or at least
Yeah.
begin to fix it.
I was chatting to a friend of ours, and I'll not name him because I give me reward. I wouldn't phrase what.
You'd be very secretive. This is the second person you mentioned.
I know,
there.
but it was a private conversation. I don't want to break somebody's confidence, but
Right.
he made the point. He's a very intelligent man, a bit of an academic, and he said, "Look, Britain is going to have to face up to the fact that they're going to have to rejoin the single market." His point was, if they seriously think that making deals with Australia or New Zealand or some South Sea island is going to solve the problem or replace Germany or France or Italy, which are major EU countries and are major exporters and importers of British goods. He says that they're going to have to face that reality. He says, no, he made the point that I've been making as well. Jude, the reality, when the original thing about Brexit started off, there was no talk about leaving the single market.
Well, I know that, Pat, they didn't say that, but I, to be honest with you, I always sort of implicitly felt that if they say you're leaving the EU, the EU was the thing that was a market originally, and I sort of assumed that.
But British industry always said that the EU was they didn't. I always got the impression. Or sorry, I'll rephrase that. The thing that I got was that they didn't want the political route, but they wanted the economic benefit, the trading benefit. But they pulled out of both.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that was the thing. It was a question of sovereignty.
Yeah, it was all to do with sovereignty and about protecting our borders.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, how long will it take till the penny drops, as you've indicated? I would say maybe 10 years. Here's my scenario for that. In the next election, Keir Starmer and company gain power. And there's such a relief among people that are no longer the Tories who have been there forever, that there's a reasonable chance, except they screw up badly, that Labour will get into a second term of office. If they get that far, then I think they'll have the cojones to say, listen, guys, this is not working. We really have to rejoin Europe. And at that point, they'll rejoin the single market, or even conceivably the EU. What do you think? Is that
no, I think it is, Jude. You see, Jude, I remember very clearly being over, it's a long time ago now, it's maybe 8-10 years ago. I was over at a funeral in Leicester, and I met these four Donegal guys. It was a family woman relative who died, and anyway, it was her family I met. And we were sitting chatting after the funeral, and I said to the guys, it just happened to be a bit of a conversation, and they said, they turned around and said, "Pat, we will definitely be voting, or we have voted for Brexit." And I said, "Jesus, lads, why do you vote for Brexit?" He says, "We came over here in the 1960s, and the guy turned around and said to me, look, 10, 15 years ago, I was earning £25 an hour." He says, "Here we are 15, 20 years on. I'm still earning £25 an hour, and I'll tell you why." He says, these Polish guys and Latvians and Ukrainians are coming in, and he says every job that's going, he says they're undercutting us, and he's not undercutting us by a wee bit, but he says considerable. And he says, "Why should I vote?" He says, "for something that's against my inimical to my interest." But the other point too, Jude, was one night a quick version of the same story. There was a woman on, and she was interviewed by Sky, and she said to the reporter very clearly, and I always remember it, she said, "Don't try and paint me as a racist." But she says, "I can't get my child in that school over there. I can't get an appointment with my GP, and I can't get a hospital appointment because this place is overrun by people who are not natives of this country." Jude, that's an easy sell if you're
It is. It is. I remember actually there was a woman was cleaning my office when I was working, and I'd stayed on like a good citizen and was working after everybody else had gone home. So I was chatting to her, and she was talking about her son had a small business. I forget what it was doing. It wasn't anything high flying. It might have been a plumbing outfit or something. And she said, he does all right, but I'll tell you, he's got one awful problem. I said, what's that? These poles. They're cutting them ground from underneath them. And she really was quite animated about it, that these people were coming in. Well, the question that I've faced then is, well, how can they do it? Again, your capitalism in action. How can they do this cheaper and yet somehow make a living? Why are we paying a guy for a higher bid if get somebody to do the same thing cheaper?
Jude, I can give you an explanation, I believe it or not, because I've had exactly that conversation. My dear wife, I'll even tell you, my dear wife's brother is a foreman on a big gang over in England road construction thing. He's been there for years. And one day, but shortly after Brexit, he was over here and I was chatting to him, and he said, he works for an Irish guy, and he says this guy, he says, it was after recession, and he says things weren't very good. So he says just to keep the guys on the books, this guy put on a contract for, I'm making this up, say for 8 million.
Yeah.
And he says that was basically doing it at cost price with a bit of sort of comfort built in, but that was it, just to keep the boys on the books. He says a couple of weeks later, he lost the contract totally, and he asked the awardees who the hell, what sort of, the guy, he had lost the contract by something like about 3 million, and it was a Polish company, and he says, "There's no way," he says, "I can compete with those guys." He says, "They're getting a hell of a lot less wages. They sleep on the site." He says, "There's some sort of like a cabin, or a cabin you'd see on a cruise ship or on a trading ship. They sleep there. One gets out of the bed and the other gets into it, and they work around the clock, and they send money home." And he says, Irish people or English people wouldn't work in those conditions for those wages and under those terms and conditions. So he says that's how they're undercutting it. So, and he said for them, they send money back to Poland or Estonia or wherever, Latvia. They're sending back money, and it's brilliant money back home. They're living quite well. It's like the Irish many years ago.
Yes, I'm going to say that. That's exactly what I used to do.
So, but by the way, the other thing as well, we probably did that to English when we went to English. No wonder we were very unpopular. But now the Poles and the Latvians are doing it to us.
No, they just didn't like us, Pat. It has nothing to do with the work.
There was a bit of history there. Yeah, I take that.
What's the solution to that? The obvious thing would be then that you don't let these people in.
Yeah, but you see that's the whole EU thing. They're saying.
Do you think that's the reason people voted Brexit, Pat?
Say again.
Do you think that's the reason people in Britain voted Brexit? Because they felt their jobs were going?
I have zero doubt that's exactly the reason they voted for it.
Well, you see, what is it? I'm not sure. An awful lot of
hold on, Jude. Well, what do you think they voted for?
Well, I think that would play a part, but there was an awful lot of talk from Boris about the sunny uplands and gaining back our own sovereignty and not having people making rules for us, laws for us over which we had no control. So they talked up pretty damn big, Great Britain. And, it's like make America great again. It's let's have our own. And you see, it's a very basic thing that you do. Anybody, I think, would say, well, we should be making, if we're running our country, we should be making the rules for what things happen in our country. Yeah. At a basic level, that seems very sensible and very reasonable. So I think a lot of people voted yes, because economic reasons, they're being undercut in terms of prices and work. But I honestly think a majority of them bought the sovereignty ticket. that,
I but I agree. You've in fairness, given a more comprehensive answer. But a part of that whole thing was taking control of our borders and keeping out Johnny Foreigner. And I think that was a big part of it. They were saying people are coming here and taking our jobs and whatever. Now, Jude, they're realizing they can't get fruit pickers, they can't get nurses. In fact, they can't even get doctors. And it's a major, and it sure did happen the minute after the Brexit there, not the minute, but remember shortly after. Remember them? They were so stuck for lorry drivers. They couldn't get produce in or out of the country. Like, and who had factored on? Where was Jacob Rees-Mogg and Boris Johnson and Michael Gove when all those things were supposed to be discussed and so on? Dude, it's been a disaster, and they haven't got around to sorting it out yet.
Yeah, well, it's true that the economic was a big thing because the Boris putting the thing in the side of the bus, that was clearly
Yeah,
economics he was appealing to. Let's put
yeah,
that money into the National Health Service, and people believed him. But also, I think that thing about, as you see, Johnny Foreigner and us making our own rules. In other
yeah,
words, the appeal of sovereignty, not bread
yeah,
and butter, but sovereignty was a big one as well.
yeah.
And you'd be wrong to ignore it because if
Uh,
you're ever
well,
going to try to
that was English nationalism, and it was also that sort of hubris that who are the French frogs to give us rules, or
yeah,
the Crouch? We beat
yeah.
them twice and all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's a difficult one, and I'm just thinking about the difficulties it'll present when it comes, as inevitably it will come, to trying to join the single market again or the
yeah,
EU again, because you'll
yeah.
still have that sort of sense that we are the people and we're in charge, and with these
But you,
foreigners.
you know someone. See, and I agree with you. Starmer hasn't the balls to stand up and say, "Wait a minute, this has been a disaster," and he's not going to say it until the next election. And even then, I wouldn't bet on it. But there's going to have to be somebody come along with a really worked out thesis, an academic. To look, here are the facts. This is not working. This is not working. Here, if we join the EU, this is the reality.
Mhm.
When it's all worked out and a roadmap of if we go left, namely staying outside it's disaster. If we rejoin the EU here, it's not. No, until that day arrives, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very interesting parallel, incidentally, between
But
the Europe and Great Britain
yeah,
and Unionists and All Ireland.
yeah,
Same thing. It's not. They tend not to say, "Would we be better off?" They say, "We don't want to be
yeah,
part of you. We
yeah.
want to be part of Great Britain. That's our
But
desire,
Judy,
not for
even
money."
the last day, I was reading again somewhere along the line. They said the Brits have accepted that it's highly unlikely there will be any major trade deal during the Biden administration with Britain. Any trade deal. So
I,
that's gone down this money as well.
yeah.
Remember, the sunny uplands would be trade deals all over the world, and we'd be masters of our own
Oh,
destiny. We'd be masters of the universe, and everything would
yeah,
fall into
yeah,
place.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, the irony of all that is the guy who said that was sacked for
Yeah,
telling lies
exactly.
of his friend.
Anyway,
I
Jim,
mean,
by the
he
way,
sacked all the time, but he was sacked from his job as prime minister for telling lies.
exactly. By the way, you said the thing about the Irish. Are we closer to Paris than Berlin?
Ah, but Berlin or
Paris.
no, not Paris. No, well,
Aye,
there's
but
an
this,
article in the Irish Times today which talks about how close we are to France, how close we are to Germany, and they concluded a very convincing article too. I think you read it that
yeah,
we were closer to France, and historically,
yeah,
the
yeah.
French were to come to our rescue, etc. But it's, the Germans have a great graph for the Irish. They really do.
Absolutely.
I've
Yeah.
met with quite a few of them, and they do have I love Irish
But
culture.
hold on, Doctor Collins. The problem is it's almost unrequited. We're what would you say? 1% of 82 million Germans come to Ireland every year. They love Irish traditional folk music.
Yeah.
They what else would you could say about the Germans? They 1969, I think it was. They helped us in the EU after the French had blocked us.
Yeah.
Heinrich Boll wrote the Irish Diaries when he said Ireland was Germany's other. They love us, and yet we love the French and we don't love the Germans.
Oh, well, here's the final question, Pat, because there's only about 50 seconds left.
Uh,
Would you feel more at home in Berlin or in Boston?
in Boston. absolutely.
Without a question, I feel exactly the same. And yet, I think the German people are wonderful people. I think they're
So do I.
friendly, they're intelligent, they're ordered, they're
And they're very helpful to
exemplary.
us.
And
Yeah,
yet,
yeah.
what is it that? Is it the language, maybe?
The language, and if you go to Boston, Jude, you'll find half of Ireland sitting there chatting to you anyway. Okay, Dr. Coles.
Okay, Pat.
All the
Happy New
best.
Year.
Happy New Year. Good
And
luck.
to both of the chaps out there, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you both as well. Good luck,
Okay,
Jude.
Pat. All the best.